Hey, this is your host, Dr. Mark, and welcome back to another episode of RxTales. You probably noticed we've got merch.
Yay!
So I live in the northeastern part of the country, and up until very recently, we had literally feet of snow. It was insane. And all this white powder everywhere.
This is pure snow! It's everywhere!
Today, I'm talking about snow. Nose candy, toot, blow, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the most famous and infamous drugs of all time. That's right, I'm talking about cocaine. Now, cocaine has a story like no other.
Needless to say, this place has everything.
It's got Inca mathematics, Johnny Depp, patent medicines, racism, like a lot of racism. The temperance movement, economies of scale, trench warfare, Studio 54, cataract surgery, colonialism, tiny little spoons, books, movies, music, cartoons, politicians, athletes, movie stars, and at least 2 popes. Not to mention a ton of crime, tragic deaths, even more racism, and a whole lot more. Now, even if you already know a thing or two about cocaine, you might want to check your sources. I'm a real licensed pharmacist, and I have been working in this field for over 30 years. So get ready to party, because we're about to go down the rabbit hole in this massive 5-part series on the one-of-a-kind Coca-licious disco dust. So the story of cocaine actually starts about 10,000 years ago on the continent of South America, where we find the earliest known evidence of cocaine use by humans. I give you erythroxylin coca. Now, the leaf of the coca plant is a pharmacological loot box, as it contains not just cocaine, but a whole bunch of other alkaloids. Now, before we get too far along, we need to go over some basic organic chemistry. So alkaloids, which are produced by many types of plants and fungi, are simply carbon compounds that contain at least one nitrogen atom, usually part of a ring structure. They are basic or alkaline on the pH scale and typically have a strong bitter taste. Side note here, most drugs are alkaloids. Ever notice how most kids tend to dislike bitter tasting stuff? Like medicine and vitamin-rich vegetables? But as we get older, we don't mind so much, right? Heck, a lot of us even like bitter foods, especially those that contain drugs, like coffee and beer. And there's likely a good reason for that. Our childhood distaste of bitter things is likely an evolutionary safety mechanism. It may have deterred young hunter-gatherers from unintentionally eating poisonous plants or fungi. It wears off in adulthood because if Stone Age you survived into your 20s, you've probably figured out which plants and mushrooms won't kill you. We should also probably discuss some basic pharmacology while we're at it.
What do you know about cocaine?
Maybe you already know, or at least think you know, a lot about cocaine. Maybe you don't. Maybe you never heard of it. I doubt that. Either way, here's what you should know from a pharmacist's point of view. All right, so this is cocaine. Cocaine is a drug that's easily absorbed, especially in tissues where there's a lot of blood vessels close to the surface. The mouth, eyes, lungs, rectum, etc. Because of this, it can be administered in a lot of ways. Orally, topically, injected, snorted, smoked, basically any way you can put a drug into the body. Now, once cocaine is in the body, it rapidly enters the bloodstream. Now, your body has a built-in defense mechanism called the blood-brain barrier. This is basically a network of cells that surrounds the blood vessels inside the brain and strictly regulates what gets in or out of the bloodstream. Now, things that your brain needs to survive, like oxygen and glucose, those pass on through. Other stuff, not so much. The blood-brain barrier has a vital role in making sure that neurotransmitters, like dopamine and serotonin, stay in the brain and don't get out. It also keeps bad stuff from getting in, like toxins, poisons, big molecules, proteins, and most drugs. Now, notice I said most. Some drugs are basically like celebrities. They just go right on in. Things like nicotine, alcohol, THC, and of course, cocaine. When cocaine enters the brain, it blocks the reuptake of serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. That causes these chemicals to accumulate and flood the receptors. What does that feel like? Euphoria. Cocaine basically turns on all the pleasure switches and cranks them up to 11. So the coca leaf itself was used by the native peoples of South America for thousands of years, beginning in modern-day Ecuador and gradually spreading all the way to the Andean highlands in Peru and Colombia. Coca was consumed by the native Incas and other indigenous peoples of South America for a variety of reasons. A lot of them were ceremonial and religious, but also practical reasons, like doing anything strenuous in the extreme elevation of the Andes Mountains. Now, there's a little bit of a distinction here. Don't confuse chewing coca leaves with snorting pure cocaine. Yes, it's kind of the same, like you get a little bit of cocaine out of the coca leaf, but coca leaves only contain a very tiny amount of cocaine, about 0.8%, which takes over 2 hours to reach peak effect when it's taken orally. So, to break it down, small amounts of a drug plus long periods of absorption equals no getting high. Unless, of course, you chew a whole bunch of coca leaves at once, which they totally did. So by the time the Inca Empire reached its peak, coca was a major crop. Coca played a big role in religious ceremonies, feasts, trade networks, and even in the measurement of distance and time. So chewing a wad of coca leaves produced a stimulant effect for an Inca individual for about 45 minutes, or 1 cocoda. During that time, an individual could run about 2 to 3 kilometers, or 1 cocoda. So chewing coca gave a pharmacological boost to Inca farmers and soldiers. It may have even played a role in giving Inca laborers the energy needed to build giant stone structures like Sacsayhuaman or Sacsayhuaman. That thing. It wasn't aliens. It was just regular dudes and cocaine. Probably. So due to its mystical and psychoactive properties, cocaine use was mainly restricted, though, to the elites in Inca civilization. That is, until the empire began to collapse in the 1500s, during the Inca Civil War. You probably never heard about the Inca Civil War. If you have, cool, you're a history guy. Nice. Or girl. Whatever. You like history. Cool. So, during the Inca Civil War, as the empire destabilized, coca use became more prevalent among the common folk. Okay, quick side story here. Around 1525, the emperor, Huayna Capac, I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I'm certain of it. Along with his successor, Niden Koyochi, died from smallpox, which was fairly common. Again, the Europeans had been bringing that over since 1492, right? So this power vacuum created by the death of Huayna Capac led to a battle for control of the empire between Huayna Capac's son, Atahualpa, and his half-brother, Huascar. So after several years of fighting in 1532, Atahualpa emerged victorious. However, it was really, really bad timing. Pizarro, Spanish colonialism, more smallpox, etc. There's a lot more to it than that, but let's get back to cocaine. So after the Spanish conquest, the Spanish conquistadors did observe and document the Incas' use of coca leaves in the 16th century when they colonized that area of the world. However, aside from a few scattered references to coca's stimulant and numbing properties, the coca plant failed to gain a lot of interest back in Europe, largely because the leaves don't last very long. They would degrade and rot on the months-long voyage back to Europe. However, in a couple hundred years, all of that was about to change. But in order to hear that part of the story, you're going to have to wait for part 2. I hope you like this video. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you'll subscribe and maybe share it with a friend. Until next time, this is RxTales. I'm Dr. Mark. We'll see you next time.